Breathe it in. That's fear.
Greetings, Temple Legends. Your favorite mentor, Arhon Okvals here. The temple is once again open. In the penultimate video of the first temple semester, the temple proudly hosts Divinity Original Sin 2.
Hell's worse over here than a dozen rotten eggs dropped in a vat of vinegar.
I'd like to show you how focusing on your strengths instead of changing your formula to appeal to a wider audience can not only ensure your continued success, but actually allow you to convert that wider audience into hardcore fans of your work. If you stick to the end of the video, you will be a creator who can make the most out of environmental interactivity, or an audience member who will appreciate when a story has grand lore. A fair bit of temple warning: if you have not played the game, it's best to click off the video and watch it later. Sadly, these lessons sometimes require examples that are spoiler territory. So without further ado, let us grab our barrels of Deathfog, teleport to the nearest pyramid, and take a position on high ground as we jump into... In all my years of gaming, I have yet to come across a game that does grand lore quite like Divinity does. Now, I don't think that Original Sin 2 does it as well as its predecessor, Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, and its expansion Flames of Vengeance, with their flying fortresses, airships, giant barriers, and dragons, but it's still pretty good in a restrained sort of way. The abyssal terror of the Godwoken, your par-dragon flying ship, the Hall of Echoes, the literal gods of the universe, and finally you, a Godwoken, infused with a piece of divinity, destined to become a god yourself. All these narrative elements come together to create a sense of grandeur in the world's lore that you can't help but get lost in. However, none of this lore is just randomly placed, and right below the grand surface there are twists that give it its own identity. So now that you have a rough idea of what grand lore is, let's properly define it. Grand lore is when a creator intentionally adds as many larger-than-life, fantastical elements to their setting to give it an elevated sense of grandeur. However, each fantastical element is placed carefully, and with distinct purpose. It's not just eye candy for the audience. Finally, the creator adds a minor or major twist to one or all of these elements that's not obvious right away. This last step of grand lore is super important to make sure it's not just a generic mix-up of high fantasy elements. For example, elves in Original Sin 2 are indeed forest-dwelling hippies. However, they also eat the flesh of others as part of their culture, to tap into their memories. And yes, this is present in the game as well. There is indeed a chosen one in the world of Rivellon, a protector infused with the power of all the gods, whose destiny is to save the world. And he commits war crimes. The source is the ultimate healing power, the very divine magic of the gods, wielded by individuals meant for a great destiny.
There's a big mountain to climb. We can do it together. But when we reach that summit, only one of us can be divine.
And it acts as a beacon for fucking nightmare-fueled Cthulhu monsters, to the point that the destined heroes of the setting have to be collared, chained up, and thrown on an island prison. Also, Larian made sure that each grand lore culture had its own unique look, and not just a generic fantasy Europe ripoff. The City of Arcs, with its mix of Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque styles, or the otherworldly, almost brutalist architecture of the Eternals, stand testament to this. But to be fair, it's a bit harder to appreciate this grand architecture when it's not in third person like in the previous games. We also have the music of Borislav Slavov that helps bring the grand lore of Original Sin 2 to life. Tragically, the legend Kirill Pokrovsky, the composer of all previous Divinity games, passed away before he had a chance to work on Original Sin 2. However, Borislav Slavov not only managed to faithfully recreate Kirill's experience not music type of soundtrack, but actually added his own unique flavor to the mix. My favorite example of this blend of Kirill's music with the more grandeur-based tones of Borislav is the soundtrack Rivellon. It really is the cherry on the cake when it comes to the grand lore and identity of Original Sin 2 and the Divinity franchise as a whole. Lastly, I'd like to mention the final and most unique to Larian twist on grand lore that we see in Original Sin 2, and that is the humor. Now, this isn't Marvel cringe humor or Whedonism, but it genuinely feels authentic and good-natured. For example, you as the Godwoken can wield the Source, the most powerful energy in this universe, and you use it to save immortal pigs covered in magical fire, or stop your quest to save the world so you can guard one of your companions as he has sex. Again, these are not forced humor moments, but actually feel appropriate to the situations you found yourself in. The result is that the grand lore elements feel more unique to this world, and you are more interested in them. So let's see what we can learn from the lessons of Original Sin 2's grand lore. The good news is that most of these lessons are universal for all creators, with a few exceptions at the end. Now, identifying and using grand lore elements is really easy. Dragons, uber-powerful wizards, giant monsters, ethereal dimensions, flying ships, and so on and so forth. All of this is great stuff, and if your focus is more on having fun in your setting than on uber-realism, feel free to implement all the grand lore you want. However, if you want to avoid it being generic and unmemorable, these are the questions you want to ask yourself. What minor or major twist can I add to all the grand lore elements in my setting? Is there a specific quality I want to apply to them that's unique to my writing? Are there any visual or audio elements that can help flesh out the identity of my grand lore? For example, making your chosen one a war criminal, telling your grand lore elements through item descriptions, or taking visual or audio inspirations from less used time periods. Now, my favorite example of this is how the OG BioWare team took the 1260s Anglo-Saxon look for buildings and armor for the majority of Ferelden, instead of the classic Central European architecture seen in a lot of fantasy. As for audio options, feel free to look at what Borislav Slavov did. He created a unique sound system for Original Sin 2 with 4 different instruments: the bansuri, tambura, oud, and cello. Once you choose your preferred instrument, its tone is woven into the soundtrack during fights, critical hits, and narrative highlights. Suffice to say, it really helps make both your personal journey and the grand lore you encounter more unique. Now, some advice specific to game designers or screenwriters/directors. When considering the grand visual style you want to implement, maybe try and combine visuals from 2 different time periods. Maybe ancient alien architecture with some steampunk. I mean, by choosing to use grand lore, you've already deprioritized uber-realism, so feel free to go nuts. It would also be great if you expanded this grandeur to the weapons and armor of the denizens of the setting. Lastly, you should really chat with your composer about the grand themes of your world, and ask them in what unique ways the music can complement it. Borislav's aforementioned method is great for games, especially if your game already boasts player choice as one of its features. If the composer can weave the grand themes of your setting into the soundtrack, people won't even need to remember your setting. Case in point... So, with the lessons of grand lore out of the way, let's move on to...
It's working. The pressure is stemming the flow of blood. Siwan clutches your arm, her eyes locked with yours. Something within the ship snaps. The floorboards shudder. Siwan struggles to her feet, clinging to you tightly. The ship lets out a deep groan, then cracks.
It's ripping the ship apart.
Once I expand, our debt is settled.
And so for the last time in this semester, we return to this wonderful narrative tool. If you've been paying attention during this semester, the games that prioritize immersion at the beginning of the story are the ones that use this tool. Divinity Original Sin 2 is no exception, although it does not use it as well as KOTOR 2 or Neverwinter Nights 2 due to a bit too much text window use and its shorter length. The immersive interactivity of Divinity Original Sin 2 begins in my second favorite type of intro setting, a ship. You wake up dazed and confused with a source-suppressing collar around your neck strapped to a crude table. A dominatrix magister lets you know the sedative will wear off soon, and you should come and speak with her. Strange machinery and symbolism, lore hidden in small notes and books, and the eerie creaking and rocking of the ship all set the mood perfectly. Right from the get-go, you are given a chance to naturally interact with the environment, learn about the world and your situation, and get your first look at the amazing dialogue system, which incorporates both your skills and your background. Now, the sign of a properly implemented immersive introduction is when the gameplay mechanics aren't just info dumped on you, but you learn to use them as you play. For example, your first real use of proper speech checks can save you from a tough fight with a ship guard. Your first quest, a murder investigation, teaches you the importance of interacting with the game world as much as possible. Talking with the NPCs on the ship reveals not only more about the world, but also the not-so-obvious game mechanics, like the elf's ability to read the memories of a person by licking or eating their flesh. You even get a chance to learn more about the world through your own character's words. However, the immersive introduction of Divinity Original Sin 2 wouldn't be half as good if they just left it at the journal entry. Ooh, your source powers are really spooky, they attract scary monsters, and proceed to not show any of it. Thankfully, that is not the case here. As you near the exit of the lowest deck, you are not told, but you see what happens when a sorcerer is uncollared. You are knocked out by an outburst of source coming from the mad sorceress woman. The entire deck is now littered with blood and corpses, as the ship seems even more unstable than before. Something is coming. This is great because it not only shows the consequences of using your power, but also removes the issue of intro sections becoming boring when you have no stakes. And believe me, the stakes are on, as now you need to get the hell off this ship. After being introduced to Rivellon's version of mustard gas, you finally make it to the top deck of the ship. Your first fight isn't with a pack of wolves in a super scripted setting while some old bald guy yells in your ear.
Your health is low. Do you have any potions or food?
No, it's with a group of eldritch abominations lured here by the very power you wield, while an even bigger abomination threatens to break the ship in the background. Finally, you get a nice character-defining moment, in which you can leave behind your future companions or go below deck yourself to try and save them. If you choose to do so, you will be successful, but nearly at the cost of your own life. The Godwoken monster emerges from the ocean and breaks the ship. You plummet to the depths, but are saved by a mysterious higher power, hinting at your role later in the story. While relatively short, especially compared to the immersive introductions of KOTOR 2 and Neverwinter Nights 2, the immersive introduction of Divinity Original Sin 2 teaches you naturally about A, the state of the world, B, how you interact with this world, and C, what kind of enemy you will be facing in the future. Now that we've seen how Larian used the immersive introduction to hype you up for the rest of the story, let's give it a proper definition. Arhon Johnny, play the clip. Okay, Archon Johnny, you are officially banned from using the projector. Fucking give me that! An immersive introduction is when a creator, usually a game designer, immerses you into their world through a natural, appropriate tutorial. The actions taken in this tutorial are appropriate to the situation and story. Finally, when done well, it gets you excited for learning more about both the setting and the rest of the main story. So now that we know how the immersive introduction is implemented and its definition, let's see what we can learn from it. First, a warning to all game designers. Do not have your NPCs talk about controls in-game, just do not do it.
Just let me kill people, damn it.
To look around, look around.
This is not cool.
If you don't want to waste your time, a short pop-up window will do, but my recommendation is always letting the player learn the controls through gameplay. This can be done through skill checks, challenges, or lore-specific missions. The equivalent of this mistake for novelists and screenwriters is a character blatantly going, "Well, as you know," and then just info dumping the audience into oblivion. Instead, you could do an immersive introduction with strong visuals and show the character's thought process. Now, the most important part for all creators is asking the right questions. What natural means of exposition and teaching do I have at my disposal? How can I use these tools in a way appropriate to the setting and story? And finally, how can I use this section to foreshadow key moments later in the story? So instead of a journal entry about how dangerous something is, show it. Instead of a wall of text exposition dump on the world state, try weaving it naturally through a conversation with an NPC. And finally, if some grand moment or battle awaits your characters in the story later, foreshadow it on screen, and make it have an impact on the character. Now, game designers, if you have a character with a certain power that is core to the identity of the game, make the immersive introduction about that power. What better way to teach a gamer how to play a game and immerse them in the story than having them use the power right away and see its full effects in action? Screenwriters and novelists, my warm recommendation is always to use a goal/mission immersive introduction. That way, exposition and immersion are achieved through observing the actions of the characters, not just their words. A group of mercs getting ready for an assignment, detectives exploring a crime scene, or members of an order going on a specific mission. All these will do wonders for both immersion and also letting your audience naturally learn more about your world. If implemented properly, you'll make sure that the majority of your audience stays along for the ride. It will be an evergreen segment of your story that will never be a chore for your audience to go through again. It doesn't even have to be an uber action-packed introduction, just one in which the actions of the characters pique the audience interest about the world and leave the audience with a smile.
Passing from one generation to the next. There's always been a Baggins living here under the hill in Bag End.
With the lessons of immersive introduction completed, let's move on to
Souls go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
There is only one other game in the first Temple semester that has implemented total interactive immersion properly, and that is Deus Ex: Human Revolution.
Well, shit, if it ain't the captain himself.
How you doing, Letitia?
Here's a quick reminder of what it is. Stay the fuck away from the projector, Archon Johnny! In the case of Deus Ex: Human Revolution, Eidos Montreal used a different approach to immersion, known as TII, or Total Interactive Immersion. Definition time. Unlike TMI, in which immersion is prioritized on every single game level, Total Interactive Immersion is when a developer focuses on developing immersion on a single game level, interactivity. However, the interactivity with the environment of the game is done to such an extent that players don't need anything else to get immersed. What the game may lack in, say, NPC routines or realistic day-night cycles, it makes up for in the sheer breadth of choices when it comes to interacting with the environment. Now, I know that some people might get mad at this, but I think Divinity Original Sin 2 does total interactive immersion better. Yes, Deus Ex has a lot of interactivity in the environment, but Divinity Original Sin 2 takes it a step further by combining interactive elements, which is something you can do in Human Revolution. Whether it's lighting surfaces on fire, figuring out all the insane crafting recipes, or committing a war crime, Divinity Original Sin 2's TII is just on another level. My favorite is making a surface area wet with rain spells and then shocking enemies caught in the storm. The power of air combined with the force of lightning. Thesis and antithesis fusing into a synthesis. It's the Hegelian dialectics of interactivity. Oh yes, Archon Luke, feel free to chime in.
That's not how fucking dialectics works, you stupid cuck! I didn't study Hegel, plus continental philosophy in general, at Harvard for 7 fucking years for some low-life know-it-all.
Right. Let's continue explaining why the TII of Divinity Original Sin 2 is so great. Apart from the aforementioned ways of interacting with the environment, DOS 2 also gives you tools to increase your interaction with the environment. The teleporter pyramids allow you to access places you wouldn't be able to normally, so make sure you take them as soon as you can. I remember one of my favorite uses of the pyramid was trying and actually succeeding in getting past the troll guarding a bridge in Driftwood, avoiding quite a tough battle at the time. Also, entire layers of interactivity exist for the player to tap into if they want. For example, taking the Pet Pal perk allows you to talk to every single animal in the game, unlocking quests, lore, and rewards galore. Do you want to add a bit of tension every time you interact with civilization? Play as an undead, and be forced to hide your face every time you enter a settlement, or use a magical face ripper to do so.
Yes. His face.
If you choose to walk into a settlement as an undead with no cover, you will very quickly go into a Balkaners discuss territorial sovereignty situation. Now, the thing I especially like is that the interactivity in Divinity Original Sin 2 goes even into standard gameplay practices from other games. For example, you can't just crouch behind an NPC, wait for the hidden trigger, and just take all their loot. No, you have to have one of your companions talk to the NPC to draw away their attention, while your thief sneaks in from another room and pilfers their pockets. This level of interactivity for just stealing is so immersive and fun, I feel like I'm in San Francisco every time I do it. And if you get caught, just like in real life, bribing works wonders. Now, the interactivity in Divinity Original Sin 2 puts the total in total interactive immersion, as you can totally skip very difficult encounters by choosing to interact with the world in the right way. Yes, of course, you can just stack oil or Deathfog barrels to deal with a lot of BS, but I honestly prefer the more subtle ways of interactivity. For example, just the sheer breadth of options a simple teleport spell gives you. There is a quest in the Black Pits area to save a man named Gwydion. Now, if you just brute force it and start a standard fight to do so, you'll face quite a difficult encounter. However, if you use a teleport spell to literally snatch the guy from the noose, you save yourself the hassle of a difficult fight, and you complete the quest. This teleport tactic also works when facing more challenging groups of enemies, as you want to take one out at a time. I love this so much. The ability to interact with the world in such a way that allows you to instantly complete a quest or bypass a difficult fight is such a huge bonus to immersion. It truly feels like you are bending the world to your whim, and not just running through a bunch of pre-scripted events. Now, another advantage of the TII system of DOS 2 is that your companions also interact with the world, in a more limited sense of course. They will have their own comments on situations and can pass speed checks which you can't.
I've seen this. Seen Deathfog in action. Such horror has no place in this world.
A weapon of untold destruction? And you use this against your own kind, knowing it ends their existence? How efficient.
Ah, Deathfog. Instant victory. I always applauded Lucian for using it.
Also, if you choose to play as one of them instead of making a custom character, the way you interact with the world and the quests you get change drastically. Again, another layer of interactivity just waiting for you to unlock it. Lastly, I'd like to mention that there are certain powers that change the way you see and interact with the environment once you get them. They are not game changers in the same way that dragon flying was in Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, but still very useful. Once you gain Spirit Vision, for example, every single area you visit has a secret layer of interactivity that's accessible every time you use this power. Or, for example, when you get the Source Vampirism perk, corpses are no longer just bloody loot containers or set dressing. They are now sources of power that can change the course of the battle. All in all, from great rewards through exploration to dominating the battlefield with proper interaction with the environment, the TII of Divinity Original Sin 2 is without a doubt its strongest asset. TII is a hidden treasure in any game that knows how to use it properly. And now let's see what we can learn from it. Just to clarify, you do not have to be a AAA Goliath of a game studio, a massive production company, or a god-tier writer to use total interactive immersion. In fact, TII is meant to fill in the gaps if you don't have ultra fancy visuals, audio, story, or dialogue. However, it can only do so if you implement it well, which comes down to asking the right questions. Which layers of interactivity are open to me? Can I enhance the story or the visuals with these tools? Is there a way to combine these layers? The layers I'm referring to are environment, dialogue, and ability. Of course, games like DOS 2 or Deus Ex Human Revolution are an excellent example of this, as the more layers you interact with, the more rewards you get. However, using these layers also very much applies to TV series and books, although to be fair, they do lack the same impact that layers of interactivity in games provide. In the case of games or TV series, the story and visuals can be enhanced with TII by providing either different approaches to the situations or an inescapable need to observe and interact with the environment. An entire fight ended in an instant due to an extra step taken in interactivity, or a case solved by paying attention to the smallest of details. And finally, combining layers of interactivity for the most routine of acts to the most fantastical is key to having good TII. Now, I don't want to discourage any smaller game designers into thinking, well, if I can provide Larian's level of interactivity, there's no point in trying. No, that is not what I'm saying. Even if you only took one element from the Larian style TII, for example combining environmental effects for greater control of the battlefield, is both fantastic total interactive immersion and a huge asset to your game. For TV writers, don't just have your character glide through the environment. Show the character making full use of it to achieve their goals. Finally, it may seem like novelists can't do anything with total interactive immersion. However, you would be wrong! Instead of a big dumb muscle head dominating the environment and enemies through sheer brute force, think of a clever use of deduction, supernatural powers, or battle-appropriate tools as a better way to show the character's interaction with the environment. So, with the lessons of total interactive immersion out of the way, let's move on to
now, your foul sorcery will be the death of us all.
Fuck, this world is going to hell, isn't it? So, it's been quite a while since we mentioned this tool. Thankfully, it's a short and simple lesson. As the name implies, an evolving world is a game world that has different world stages as you progress through the story. This can be through the appearance of new hostile or friendly NPCs, changes in previously explored environments, or the appearance of specific storylines based on the choices of the characters in the story. One of the best examples of this, even in the present day, is the island of Corinus in Gothic 2, which excelled in all the aforementioned criteria. However, there exists a subclass of the evolving world that comes into play when you can't meet all the criteria mentioned above. This is the evolving world of destruction. Basically, whether as a result of the character's choices or just the story progressing forward, the locations you see in the world are either ruined or destroyed. It is very effective at conveying the actual end of the world feeling in Save the World stories. We first see Larian apply this tool in Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, where most of the game world is completely ravaged by the end of the story. As a result, the quest to stop Damien has real weight to it. The evolving world of destruction has a similar effect in DOS 2, as the progression and Voidwoken abominations you meet really makes you feel like the world is on the brink of the apocalypse. The main difference is that in DOS 2 you get some say in how much destruction you want to see. For example, you can't stop the destruction of the Nameless Isle, or of your own beloved ship, but you can choose whether to kill an entire city or not. However, I'd like to clarify something. Just destroying every single piece of the world and going, wow, see how devastating the evil you are fighting is not the right way to do this. The destruction has to be A, gradual, B, in sync with the progression of the story. That way you avoid just destroying your world pointlessly and gaining nothing. You don't always need destruction of entire areas. Sometimes encountering new hostile NPCs to imply the progression of the destructive force coming for the world is more than enough. I think the Voidwoken are an excellent example of this, as every time you encounter them they have these creepy comments about you being thieves, and that the world will be theirs again. This really piques curiosity as to what the story behind them is, which I won't spoil. Not even the biggest city in the region is safe, as the moment you approach Arx you see not one Voidwoken abomination attack, but two. And if that wasn't enough, once inside Arx you realize there are demonic infiltrators lurking within the city, led by an uber-powerful soul-snatching demon. All these destructive scenes and forces serve a single purpose: to make the threat to the world feel real. Now let's see what we can learn from the evolving destruction of Rivellon. So first, a bit of universal advice for all creators. Make sure the zones being destroyed have some connection to the audience. Maybe they did a lot of quests there in the case of games. Perhaps it was some kind of base for characters in a TV series or books. If there is no connection to these places, the audience won't feel a thing if these places are destroyed. Now let's see which questions you need to ask yourself in order to use the evolving world of destruction properly. As discussed, what connection can I establish between the audience and this place before it's destroyed? How can I make sure the destruction progresses along with the story? Do I want complete destruction or just enough to foreshadow what's coming? A beloved base to an order under attack by an otherworldly threat has that much needed connection to both the characters and the audience. The fall of a great civilization which matches the progression of the story towards that end of everything scenario. The appearance of a menagerie of progressively worse abominations that signal the end that is to come. Finally, a last bit of warning based on creator type: if there is something in the story that threatens this location character audience connection, it must be removed. In the case of games, it can be an unnecessary amount of fetch quests or puzzles that irritate more than they help. For screenwriters, pointless scenes that serve no purpose to the story, especially if you are adapting something, are a threat to this connection. And finally, novelists, exposition dumps are not and never will be a replacement for genuine connection to a certain location made through character action or in-world events. So, with these lessons complete, it's time for These sections are always the hardest for me to do, especially when I'm covering studios like Larian. However, if we are truly to become better audiences and creators, we must learn from successes as well as failures. To be fair, apart from the elements mentioned in the previous sections, Larian did their best to minimize these failures with smaller, less noticeable benefits too. The NPC reactivity is insanely good in this game, whether it's reactions to the battlefield or the environment. Your character, although not voiced for the majority of the game, gets unique lines with a voice of your own choosing for minor comments in the game. The fact that there are speech checks with skills other than just classic persuasion is just chef's kiss. There is also the fantastic narrator who makes reading long lines of text a breeze. Your companions are also not class restricted, and you can basically make any class combo you want, encouraging a lot of replayability. Basically, no party member feels useless unless you make them so. Also, the place where you get to test out these things, the Island of the Reaper's Eye, is absolutely fantastic. Whether it's a book or a game, I love stories that start on islands and then slowly foreshadow what the mainland / the rest of the world is like. The Reaper's Eye Island, more specifically Fort Joy, which is the main hub, is no exception. Its dark tone, complemented with bits of Larian's jolly good humor, is great for introducing the state of Rivellon, while allowing you to test the plethora of role-playing tools Larian gives you. However, despite all these nice benefits, both the ones I just listed and the ones before in other sections, there are glaring problems that just grind my gears. Now don't get me wrong, it doesn't ruin the game or anything, but it does make me go,
Why? 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 Why?
Why did you choose to include this, Larian? So, the more nitpicky stuff first. Larian, what the hell is this journal? Just how? Where? Who am I looking for here? I don't know if you tried to apply TII to the journal, or whoever designed it thought that adding 5 different tabs for one quest was immersive, but just no, never do this again. One thing you do not want to complicate is a quest journal. Keep it as simple and naturally immersive as you can. Also, level 3 and above spells requiring source points? What the fuck? Later on, you notice there are literally ordinary elemental spells from Original Sin 1 that now require source points. Meteor Shower, for example, is a great high-level fire spell, usable by my non-sorcerer characters in Divinity Original Sin 1. Now it requires 3 to 4 source points and action points as well. Look, I get some of you will argue, well, that's the point, it's more rare, and you need to save it for the right time. And if we're talking about specific source-based ultra-high-level spells, sure, agreed. But for spells that were ordinary before and were a lot of fun to use and made fights easier, hell no. Source isn't always easy to come by, especially when some NPCs can steal it from you. My point is, source points should be used for source powers only, not for regular high-level spells that were absolutely usable by non-sorcerers in the previous game. Also, why the hell does a rogue need source points to perform a high-level backstab? What's the difference between a normal backstab and a source backstab? Does the ordinary one just require a Bulgarian background? Well, actually, Mentor, these are source-infused regular spells. Great! Then give me the option for a regular meteor swarm and a source-powered meteor swarm then. At one point in the game, you are forced to fight other Godwoken for the title of the Divine. While this is absolutely great story-wise, I don't like that the opponents are undead husks of the companions you didn't choose to be part of your party. Like, I get choice and consequence, but in a game as rich in choice as DOS 2, do I only have 2 choices in this matter? Either take these people as your companions, or have them die and be forced to fight them as undead later. I guess I prefer to have a choice to save them, that's all, which is not an odd request considering the breadth of choices in this game. Another thing that would have been nice is more game time with characters from Divinity Original Sin 1, like Jahan. By far he had the most interesting backstory in the original game, and I would have liked to see him have a more prominent role in the story. Instead, he's just there for 1 to 2 quests and that's it. Now for the bigger things. I love that proper positioning can make or break a fight in DOS 2. For example, the Dwarf Fortress fight is far easier if before the battle you take up positions here and here with the main thrust of the attack going in this direction. However, no matter how good the positioning is, in some fights you just have to exploit the AI. Whether it's teleporting NPCs into zones they can't move from, or going in and out of the room until you whittle down the enemy numbers. Granted, it could be that I just need to get good, but the setup of some of these fights is just brutal, to the point of making me wonder if it's worth finishing the game. For example, fighting these fucking cursed revenants of fire, which respawn unless you use up your precious source points to put out the necrofire in the area. Oh, and by the way, none of them give you any XP for killing them, so it's a great use of your source points and other resources. Another fight that made me want to punch my monitor were the Blood Moon Isle vaults, where you have to fight possessed individuals, exorcise the demon from the host's body, and try to kill it before it goes back into the victim's body. Suffice to say, I think I helped only 1 victim and left the others to their demonic infested fate. Sorry guys. I'm all for challenging fights as a test of skill, but adding annoying mechanics to spike the difficulty just so you can prolong the game time is not a plus in my book. To be fair, however, I don't think Larian did this intentionally, but rather it was a side effect of trying to challenge their players and have them engage with the combat system more. But you know what Larian did do intentionally? Add these progression stopping puzzles that literally made me alt-tab and look for a guide after a few minutes, as it just felt like total gameplay padding bullshit. Now I don't mind all the puzzles, the Lunar Temple one was fine. However, the fucking Path of Blood puzzle, and later on the Crypt puzzle right before the final battle are dog shit. Who thought, oh man, this is really gonna get people excited for the final stretch of the game? Imagine just as you land on the collector base, Shepard has to spend an hour or more unlocking a fucking door before the mission can even start. Again, I'm not against puzzles in games, and I can fully accept if the puzzles are easy for most people, and I'm just kinda retarded. However, you can't convince me that adding puzzles before the final stretch of the game is a good idea. Puzzles, when used at the right time, are a great addition to the game. For example, the Urn of Sacred Ashes bridge puzzle in Dragon Age Origins. Divinity Original Sin 2 is a long game, so having this kind of obstacle bar your way to the finish is a huge mistake in game design on Larian's part. So feel no guilt about looking it up online. Speaking of looking things up online, I sadly forgot the name of the Reddit user Hero who posted a quick save reload trick for the Kraken in the final battle that delays its spawn. Whoever you are, sir, thank you. I might not have finished the game without you. Basically, the final battle has 2 phases, and the second one is just Ultra Nightmare difficulty if you spend a lot of resources in the first phase. It's the Eclipse of the Divinity Saga, but the only essay that is happening is to your sanity. Luckily for me, story-wise, I chose to side with Lucian of my own free will, so the fight was a bit easier. And as mentioned, I used the quick save/reload tip to delay the spawn of the OP Kraken boss, so I had more time to finish off Brachus. But holy shit, good luck if you want to fight all of them. Now I already hear some people going, "Huh, Mentor, what the hell? The last fight is easy, all you have to do is activate Armor of the Necrons, the Emperor's Will buff, then drain channel soul ability used by reaction YouTubers, then apply 5 different ointments to your weapon, and just one-shot the boss." Yeah, no, the majority of the players are not ultra min-maxers, and in fact it actually takes the joy out of the game if you can't take the powers you want, but rather something you need for the final battle. Of course, you can just cheese the fight with Deathfog or just lower the difficulty, but come on, this is the final battle. It's supposed to feel like an epic confrontation, not a, yes, let's see how I can best exploit the AI before the battle even begins. Story-wise, I actually really like the ending I chose, and the fates of your companions. This, however, only makes me sad since a lot of people probably missed out on this due to quitting at the final battle. It's like getting to the end of the book, but only being able to understand the ending if you knew a special inside joke that only the author and his close friends know. All in all, having a huge spike in difficulty for the final battle, the kind that makes people rage quit after 100+ hours of playing the game, is not hardcore RPG goodness, but storytelling suicide. Thankfully, as I said, you can cheese this fight, and story-wise the ending was pretty satisfying. However, if there was no way to cheese the fight, I think it would have ruined DOS 2. So, let's see what we can learn from these mistakes. Thankfully, the lessons are mostly universal and easy to implement. First of all, the way character information is presented, no matter the medium, has to be simple and natural. No overcomplicated journals, bloated exposition dumps, or confusing timelines. A nice simple journal, or simple monologue, or sketching by the characters will do just fine. Another tip is to try and be less extreme in the consequences of the action taken by the characters in the story. Try and have at least 3 choices with 3 possible scenarios presented to the characters in the story. If it's just, take this person with you, or they will be your sworn enemy and suffer a horrific fate. It feels less realistic and more like an artificial extremity of choices to make them feel more impactful. I think Witcher 3 does this pretty well for the most part, especially for the fates of the NPCs. Also, never waste returning characters that were loved by the audience in the previous story. Giving them more of a role in your next story is always a safe bet for audience enjoyment. Now creators, it's fantastic that you developed your skill to the point that people praise it non-stop. But please, understand it's not an invitation to overindulge to the point that you alienate entire parts of your audience. Larian is great at designing battles and puzzles, but they absolutely overindulged in these things by the end of Divinity Original Sin 2. Thankfully, I see this is not the case in Baldur's Gate 3, so Larian did learn this lesson, which is great. You can be a great director, but overindulging in your own specialty can lead to a loss of audience retention. You can be a great world-famous writer with a great writing style, but overindulging in this can lead to an entire section of your work being labeled as a slog. No matter how great you are, keep in mind that an overindulgence in one's specialty can and will be your downfall if you are not careful. This especially applies to putting up artificial obstacles before the story is about to end. Lastly, don't make the conclusion to your story either ultra difficult to achieve, in the case of games, or ultra difficult to understand in the case of films or books. Provide enough challenge/mental stimulation for it to feel earned, while allowing the majority of your audience to enjoy it. I honestly don't believe in the, well, it takes a higher IQ to understand the point and the ending of my great story. A good story is accessible to most people, as is the satisfaction of finishing it. Finally, just a last bit of advice only for game designers. If you had a certain set of skills and powers available in the last game, don't add new restrictions to it in the next game and be like, it's a limited resource now, it's more fun. Instead, use this restriction only for a new set of powers your players get access to, or even better, have the new powers be an upgrade to the old ones. Just trust me on this, losing access to a fun element the players had before is never a plus. So, with those lessons out of the way, let us finally get to... My temple legends, I'd stand with 1,000 of you than with 1,000,000 slop enjoyers. Do you know what's there? Beyond that beach? Quality storytelling, take it, it's yours! So those would be the lessons of one of the best CRPGs out there. Despite the failures I mentioned, it is a flawed masterpiece that helped Larian take their rightful place at the top. If you're an audience member who wants to experience true interactive immersion in an RPG, or a creator who wants to learn how to spice up their more generic setting, DOS 2 is quite a good guide. As always, the best place to get the definitive edition of DOS 2 is on GOG. Now, I'm aware if this is your first Temple video, you may be wondering, yeah, these lessons are fine and all, but I'm not a creator. What good will it do if I learn all this? Well, it's simple. You will know the theory, and the creators will know the theory and put it into practice. Why is this important? Because I believe that a higher standard of quality storytelling can only be achieved with enough public awareness to appreciate it. We are living in an age of lazy remakes, horrible adaptations, and insultingly bad sequels. As with other dark periods in history, the way out is through knowledge. So here's what you, the audience member, a temple legend, can do to bring about an end to this darkness. You can identify, appreciate, and support creators who use the knowledge gained from videos like these. Identify grand lore, appreciate total interactive immersion, And finally, support creators who combine satisfaction with accessibility in their stories. A creator can apply all these lessons to perfection, but if no one is there to notice or to support them, then the dark age of entertainment continues. And if I'm the only one who feels like that, so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not. A community built on mutual trust, with a mutual mission of keeping quality storytelling alive, can help shape society for the better. Make no mistake, we are the stories we tell ourselves. And so we leave Rivellon for the last time in the first Temple semester. It will be quite a while before we are back, so I hope you enjoyed your stay as much as I did. Divinity Original Sin 2 really is a gem of a game. For the next video, the grand finale of the first Temple semester, we'll be visiting a place where the wind is always howling. As we near the end of the first Temple semester, without a doubt the hardest step for both myself and the Temple, I can't express how grateful I am to all of you who visit and support the Temple regularly. It's no longer an empty building with only the echoes of my footsteps to give it life. In time, I hope even more Temple legends join us, as we reactivate more of the Temple's dormant functions. Rest assured that the first Temple semester is only the beginning. We'll do this again. Time is a flat circle. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, as it helps with the upkeep of the Temple, and helps those who are still climbing find their way here. Have a safe path down the mountain, and I'll see you next time in the Temple.